also here. Sir, can we see your check your audio and video once? Yeah, sir, yeah. There's some problem in your audio, sir. We cannot hear you. Video is clear, but sorry, sir, we cannot hear you. We can see you, but we cannot hear you.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, yes, sir. Now you're audible.
Perfect. Sorry. Yeah, it's worked out. Hello.
Yes, sir.
You can hear me now?
Yes, yes, sir. The audio is clear.
Okay.
Anshul, most people are from GNLU or from around Gujarat, or what are the kind of audience that we are expecting?
Most, there are people from different law schools all over India, from different law colleges, including from outside Gujarat, everywhere.
Okay.
And even there are many participants who are not from law background also, like commerce students, people from economics background and all.
Okay.
જેને 200 એનું માં 200 યુનિટ હોય ને તો 200 ઉપર વાપરતો હોય તો માપ નહીં મહિનાનું
Hello.
Yes, Ariman, we can.
Okay, so I think we should begin. Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 3 of our webinar series. So there were multiple reasons for why a webinar series on such a theme. As we all know, COVID-19 has drastically changed the way we go about doing our work. It has affected every aspect of our lives and has forced all industries to adapt to an unprecedented closure of the world. The legal industry is no different. From virtual hearings to e-filings, the legal industry is trying to cope up with the different aspects of COVID-19. This has also pushed law students and the people otherwise employed in the traditional part of the jobs to seek an alternative career. And we see new areas of law and different practices emerging. Entrepreneurs have given dynamic solutions to the various existing problems of the industry, and we have two such pioneers with us here today. I would also like to inform this is a collaborative effort by Think India and GNLU Center for Corporate and Insolvency Law. So Think India is a pan-India initiative which looks to promote the best talents of the country and impart them with a nationalistic spirit. It also seeks to inspire youth to be of service to society, and it partakes in various such initiatives which you can check on their website. Now, before I introduce the speakers, I would also like to inform everyone that each speaker would be speaking for about 20 minutes, after which we'll have a brief Q&A session. You can put your questions along with your name, institution, and the speaker to which your question is directed in the chat box. I would also request everyone to keep their mics muted during the presentation for the convenience of the speakers and the listeners, failure of which could lead to removal from the webinar. Having said that, our first speaker is Mr. Vidushpat Sinha. Welcome, sir. He is the managing partner of Krida Legal and is one of the leading sports and games lawyers in this country. He is a graduate from GLC Mumbai, while he also holds an LLM in sports law from De Montfort University. He has also been part of many esteemed organizations, including British Association of Sports Law, FICCI National Sports Committee, and has also represented many high-profile clients, including Commonwealth Games Federation and other sports persons. He has also assisted Justice Mudgal Doping Probe Committee. And our second speaker is Mr. Pranjal Sinha, who is the co-founder and CEO of Sama. Sama is a revolutionary and completely online mechanism for dispute resolution. And he is a graduate from NUJS Kolkata, as well as the youngest recipient of the Weinstein Jams International Fellowship. He is also a certified mediator by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs and was also the chief coordinator of the Indian Mediation Week. We are also joined by Mr. Rahul Chaudhary, who is the former national co-convener of Think India. He did his graduation and post-graduation from RML NLU and is currently pursuing his PhD. He'll be giving the valedictory remarks for the session. Also joining us are Sri Ganesh Turerauji, the national in charge of Think India, Shivam Raghuvanshi, who is the national co-convener of Think India, and Mr. Anshul Gautam, who is the Think India state convener for Gujarat. I welcome all the guests who have joined us for this evening and the webinar. And without further ado, I would request the first speaker to begin with this presentation. Over to you, sir.
Thank you and good evening to everybody. This session and webinar is especially close to me because I've had the pleasure of working with GNLU. In fact, I've been working with GNLU setting up this sports law center. So GNLU is close to me, though I'm not graduated from GNLU, but I've been working with GNLU for the last 4 years. And with Think India as well, Ganesh ji, who's attending the session, is again somebody that I've interacted with a number of times. And I really appreciate the kind of work that Think India is doing, right? Non-profit, looking at propagating knowledge and propagating students forward. I think that's a very, very brilliant initiative. I see most of these companies that are coming up online, they're all trying to do these internships and knowledge propagation for commercial gains. And Think India does it for non-profit, and so that's brilliant, right? It's a good initiative, and thank you, Think India, for that. And I've had, as I said, the pleasure of working with Think India on a couple of papers for foreign companies. So so that's again something that I've really take a pleasure working with, and that's why I really accepted it without even a hesitation when Think India and GNLU both together decided to do this webinar. So thank you. The theme being alternate careers in law. That's a very novel theme, and it's a quite a interesting theme because when we're in law college, I think traditionally we are taught various sessions like IPR, litigation, corporate law, contract law, IPR, and normally a myopic view sometimes is given that yes, what is my, and this is something that I've also gone through when I was a lawyer. Oh yes, I will join a senior counsel office, I will learn, and then I will at some point become a senior counsel, and that is it's maybe a view when you're getting into litigation, or when you're getting into something, you say, oh, I'll be a corporate lawyer, I will join a big corporate firm, I will get paid X few lakhs of money, and then I will rise someday, I will become a partner, and my name will be splashed somewhere or the other, and I've made it. Those are the kind of certain views that you come. Some people do take up teaching as well, and they say, yes, we'll become assistant professor, we'll eventually become professor, maybe dean. But sometimes that's my personal view. Sometimes that's the limited view of the legal profession, right? First and the foremost that I come out even when we're talking about alternate career in sports is, just because you're studying law does not mean you have to be a lawyer. Law equips you to do many more things. I know there is somebody who's given a lecture before me, who was actually from the judicial field. So, as a lawyer or somebody who studied law, you can get into a judicial field. A lot of IAS or IPS actually also study law to get into those fields. Law also equips you very strongly to get into the corporate administration or corporate law administration, or just administration as a CEO or a junior to him, because that equips you very well. You understand the law, and all the policies and everything that you are doing is based on that. Your communication develops very well. You measure each and every word when you're writing. So that's a very essential skill whatever you're going to be doing. So the law equips you for that as well. So as I said, being a lawyer does not, or being a law student does not mean you have to be a lawyer. In fact, in the field of sports as well, I have very good friends who started off as lawyers, who were actually sports lawyers as well, but they are not pursuing sports law. They have got into sports administration. One of them is running NGO for sports people. One is running sports agency, who's basically helping poor athletes come up, trying to give them insurances. One is with relatively well-to-do sports company called IMG Reliance. So, and they're not doing law. They're just in administration. But they started off as lawyers. They even did a bit of legal work when they were in law firms or in various capacities with some lawyers. So as I said, law does not mean you have to be a lawyer. It just equips you very well to take up any profession, just like you would do political science, or just you would like you do history, honors, art. Law just equips you very well to do many other things. When you decide to take up an alternate career in law, when we're talking about when you are trying to do something within the legal field, what is important is you have and clear your principles, and very basic principles. Basic principle about constitutional law, basic principles about contract law, basic principles about intellectual property law, basic principles about torts. Because any field that you get into, any field, even CRPC, CPC, and evidence, any field you get into, you will have to have a basic knowledge of these. I don't think that there is any, two ways about it. Basic knowledge, even if you decide to specialize, like I decided to specialize in sports and gaming laws, I had to get that knowledge, and I have had very good mentors, which is the next point I wanted to get on to, is try to work and identify good people in the profession. And good people in the profession, I will say, are not necessarily people who are absolutely sitting on the top. Those people have to be good in the sense that they are willing to impart knowledge to you and are willing to promote you. I think those are two things that are very key. What I would also recommend is when you pick up mentors, you have to be loyal to them, because there are a lot of confidential information you will pick up when you're working with them. And there are things that when you're working with them, you will understand there are things which you may not agree with. in the 100%. And I'll tell you why. I'm not saying it is wrong in the sense. And what I'm trying to say is, you may have a different point of view for a problem, and they may have a different point of view for a particular problem. They may have a different point of view because of the experience, because of the way they've seen things, and you may have a different point of view because what you've read. You know, while you should be able to put your view forward, but always be loyal once you've put your view forward, believe in what they are saying and doing, and try to understand why they're taking that decision. That's a very, very key thing. Because sometimes I have felt it when I've seen a lot of law students coming, they try to always second guess their mentors and try to say, oh, this guy did not know anything, and should have been the principal. No, you cannot, those guys are doing things because they've had the experience, because they've seen 10 more things. So you have to try to fathom and try to comprehend why they're taking a decision rather than trying to second guess them. So that's something that I personally feel very strongly, that you have to respect your mentors. I've been really, really fortunate that I've had three very, very good mentors. Justice Mukul Mudgal sir, who was at that time the Delhi High Court judge, who helped me get into the field of sports law, who guided me through. And as a human being, he's a very, very brilliant human being. If you ever have a chance to interact with him, I'm sure you will say the same thing. Mr. Dushyant Dave sir, again, a person, a lot of times people say he's a taskmaster. There is no two ways about it. He's a taskmaster. If you do not do something correct, you will get it from him. But that's what it teaches you, perfection and how to be very good at what you're doing. And he also teaches you how to handle pressure. And when I was working with him in the Supreme Court as his junior colleague and a junior in his chamber, it's like you have to know your brief here at the back of your hand. I think whoever has worked with him, you will know. He says, chew your brief up. Chew your brief up is, know your brief up, back and down, right? Because sometimes you don't know what questions you may be prepared in a certain manner. The judge may ask you a question in a particular different manner. So you have to be ready and you have to be able to answer that. If you've not read your brief properly, you will not be able to answer it. So every time you cannot just go prepared with one view. You have to be prepared for all views and whatever can come from your brief. So that's something that I learned from him. From Lakshmi Kumaran sir, when I worked with him at the firm Lakshmi Kumaran and Sridharan, what I learned from him is how to focus, in the sense that, when I went to him, I was still raw. I would say, I went and I said, sir, I want to do X, Y, Z. I want this sports law involves this, sports law involves this, sports law involves this. Being such a busy lawyer, being a managing partner of such a big law firm, he still gave me time. And, he listened to me and they said, Vidush, I think you need to focus on these elements first. Once you achieved it, then you go on these elements, then you go on these elements. Because if you try to achieve all three, you will be left nowhere. So, so that's what I learned from him, how to focus. I also learned from him how to talk to clients and how to talk to other fellow senior lawyers, because that's something that I did not really learn when I was with Justice Mudgal and Dushyant Dave sir, because there were two different levels of practice. One was a sitting judge, one was a senior counsel who was really addressing the judges. They had very limited interaction with clients as well as with other law firms, right? So those are two things. With clients, you have to pitch to them. So, that's what I learned from Lakshmi Kumaran sir, how to pitch, how to talk to them. And same with learn from him how to talk to other law firms. That's small learnings that you pick up from your mentors, how they interact with people and how they talk to people, and respect them always. And I think there's no two ways. And I cannot even stress this. I don't know, even if I say this 10 times, I think it will be less. Always respect your seniors. Second is, while you are deciding what to specialize in, it is essential that you gain knowledge around it. It's not that, suddenly you decide or you do a particular paper or you say you work on a certain field for a year and you say, oh, this is what it is. I have learned whatever is to learn from this and now I'll branch out to it. I don't think that's the approach when you're adopting an alternate career or if you're trying to take up a specialization. First you have to get detailed knowledge. Now, detailed knowledge comes through maybe doing courses, working with the right mentors, and not the right mentors only in the legal field. So say for sports industry, I would say, just don't go and work with a sports law firm or a person doing sports law. Try to go and expand, go and work with the industry body. So like work with FICCI, work with CII, try to work with NGOs, So, you have these various NGOs like STAIRS, OGQ, which is Olympic Gold Quest, Go Sports Foundation, Sportscom, uh, Lakshan. So, name it, just have to do a bit of research. That gives you a flavor of the industry. Go and work with sport federations who are actually involved in administrative work in it. If you talk about gaming law, go and work with, again, there are industry bodies in gaming law. There is the All India Gaming Federation, there is the Rummy Federation, there is the Indian Association of Mobile Association. So again, there are industry bodies. Try to go and work with them. Again, work for free. Just try to gain knowledge, try to get an industry knowledge before you try to say, I want to focus on this particular area of law. Law comes much later. Try to get the knowledge of the industry. It really takes you a lot. And why it takes you a lot further is because as lawyers, and I've dealt with lawyers as a sports lawyer with law firms and partners of the different law firms. They come and negotiate, and and I believe they have much better knowledge than me in, say, when I'm negotiating in a transaction. So for a particular contract law, they may have a very strong knowledge. Where they end up losing is on the industry expertise, and that is where you catch them. And when you catch them and you push them back, is where your clients really appreciate you, and then say, and they feel that yes, we've come to the right law firm. Uh, that's why we want to go to a specialized lawyer rather than going to a generic lawyer. So that's why I say try to get a knowledge. I got it. As fortunately, as I said, I had good mentors. I've also worked with the Commonwealth Games Federation, so I got a lot of knowledge on the administrative part, and I've continued working with, as I said, with FICCI, with CII. I've actually helped setting up a Sportscom, which is actually a sports specific industry body for sports. So again, that's something that you have to keep doing. While you're looking at alternate careers, what you also have to do is not worry about money from day one. That's something that is a no-go. If you say, okay, fine, day one, I start looking at alternative careers, just because I want to specialize in something and I will get money out of it. My personal view is never happens. Uh, I had to work at least 4 or 5 years, or maybe more, about 8 years, just working for free in half the time in the sports and gaming law issues. Just doing policy, trying to work with the people who were doing it, just doing work free for them, and trying to enhance my own knowledge as well. So when I was doing the sports code and that's something that I got a very big opportunity of doing with the government of India. All work was done free. I was putting 88 hours, 10 hours without any gain, just for the just for the benefit that yes, I was doing something in the sports law field, and I was gaining out of it, and that is what drove me. Money never drove me. Eventually, money will come. Don't worry. It's not that money will not come. Eventually, it will come. If you specialize, if you gather knowledge, and people recognize you for your knowledge, money will follow. Don't worry. But you cannot go into an alternative field saying that yes, this is something that I will make money. You have to go in it thinking that it is my passion and I want to go in it. Money is a additional bonus that you can get or you may not get. But if you go with a passion, whatever you do, at least you will be happy inside and listen, I'm pursuing my passion. Whether money comes or not, doesn't make a difference. So that's something that I would advise you guys. Whatever you are pursuing, please pursue for passion and not for money. Uh, my personal view is now this is the area of specialization. The era of specialization is coming in. If you want to do litigation, then litigation becomes a specialization. Litigation is not generic. Litigation means courtcraft, understanding how to put a particular view forward to a particular judge and what will he fathom. And things like what I learned with, again, working with Sir Justice Mudgal as well with Dushyant Dave sir is, always go and sit in the courtroom and try to gauge what the counsel is and what the judge is feeling, and then try to address that. Because if you try to address that, because he may have said something in before in a 2 or 3 matters, you try to address it, try to gauge what he's saying and then address that. If you do that, most likely you will get a better hearing and the judge will hear you more, and probably you will get a better relief. So small things you pick up, and that is what litigation teaches you. As an AOR, you will learn how to draft in a particular court and what those judges are looking at when they are looking at briefs or when they're looking at drafts. So that's something that you learn. As a specialized means you have to gauge the nuances, you have to gain the intricacies, and you have to have an industry knowledge. In legal, in litigation, it could be limited in the sense that, say, in court, it could be court knowledge. But if you say, if you want to specialize in outside, say, in sports, gaming, I know Pranjal is there who specializes in alternate dispute resolution, then he'll probably talk about, I think, technology and how AI is also coming in and how the world is perceiving alternate dispute. So that is something that you have to keep viewing and keep expanding your knowledge as well. The COVID time is, I think, while it is detriment, I think we are all facing this. And what is important is you have to stay safe and healthy. It is also something, every challenge also throws up opportunities. And please take this as an opportunity. There are so many courses that are happening. So whatever you're thinking, yes, I think I might want to specialize in this, or this is maybe my alternate career in law. Google it, try to find as many courses on it happening in India, trying to has happening internationally, try to attend as many as you can, and try to see who are the people in it, and then try to pursue them and say, listen, I want to pursue this alternate career. Sir, what is your guidance? And try to get industry knowledge on it. It really, gave you a big traction. Just having aspiration does not mean that you will be able to develop an alternate career. You have to pursue it as well. To pursue it means that you have to do knowledge development. You have to do peripheral work. Peripheral work means is trying to understand who are the people, who are the sectors, or what are the sectors involved. Besides legal, who are the people involved in this, in the administration of it, uh, in policy work in it, and try to work with them. Try to get contacts with them, and try to have a communication with them. Um, and sometimes from one other things lead. For me, when I started sports law, I started sports law by I was actually looking, and believe it or not, I was looking for an art law particular experience for my mom, who's the art conserver and restorer. And this is in second or third year of my college. And suddenly something I said, oh, I am very interested in the sports. I was a college cricket captain. I was a university medalist in table tennis as well. And I said, I think sports may be something that I would like. And this is 2004-5. There was nothing known as sports law in India. And then I Googled it and I said, oh, this sounds interesting. So next 5 days, I just read about sports law. And I said, this sounds interesting. Let me find a course. Then I found a course in University of Pretoria, South Africa. So tried to emotionally blackmail my grandfather and my father. Listen, please, can you fund this? I want to go for this course. Obviously, a holiday was also back on my mind, but course was obviously the first and foremost. So I went, did a course, I got a bit more knowledge. My professors from the University of Pretoria then guided me that maybe try to work at the International Sports Law Center at The Hague. They gave me a recommendation. I applied, got there. Again, the professors helped me. Then I got knowledge about more people in this field. They helped me that maybe you should do a course. They also helped me get new internships. So it's a developing field. Keep pursuing it, and doors will keep opening for you. And that's what I would suggest when you're trying to pursue an alternate career. Keep pursuing, doors will keep opening up, new opportunities will keep opening up. Maybe your vision will also expand. You may have got into it with a particular view, and your view will go and change to something. And for that matter, I'll get into the gaming law. So how I got into gaming law, I never wanted to get into gaming law. I was pursuing my sports law, and my thesis paper I decided to write was on sports betting. And when I decided to write on sports betting, I studied gaming laws internationally. I tried to study gaming law in India, and I saw there were so many lacunae. So you start researching, start developing, and when you read and when you're writing a thesis paper, especially, you read a lot, and then you try to put your thoughts down. And that's where I got interested into sports betting. Then I got into gaming. I wrote a few papers for FICCI after that. Because you write, people come to you and say, okay, what is your view on this? And then I got into the gaming field. And that's how story continues. So as I said, you start with something, doors will open up for you, and your vision will keep expanding. And I hope, and I don't hope to restrict myself even to sports and gaming. I hope that I will keep learning and pursuing as I go on in my legal career, and keep getting more aspects on specialization, as well as keep learning from young law students and people coming into this field. For COVID, I think I can only say, I think I just have a few 5 minutes more, so I will just keep it short. I want to keep it in time. So for COVID, I know some people will be feeling a bit frustrated sitting at home and locked down and thinking, and getting a bit stressed on how this will happen and how they will go. The future is. Believe me, this too shall pass. Keep that keep that in writing. This too shall pass, and take this as an opportunity to develop yourself. This too shall pass. Economy will open. Everything will open, and if you are more equipped and better, have a better knowledge, you will stand in a better stead. I'll just touch upon sports and gaming laws as a field, so that I just give you a flavor of it. I can talk about it for days and days, but let me just give you a flavor of it. When you talk about sports law, obviously, as I said, you have to have a very, very strong general knowledge of legal principle. In particular, I would say contract law, IPRs, CRPC, evidence, and general knowledge of procedure. For specific in sports law, it comes down to rules and regulation of bodies, which is international sport federations, domestic sport federation. I'm sure you've heard about. There are football fans here. They will keep hearing about transfer rules and regulation, transfer fees, player wages. You know how those take place. They're all governed by a FIFA law. So you have to have a knowledge about those when you're getting into those kind of regulations. In cricket as well, you have your operational rules. Your whole IPL controversy happened around the operational rules. Your anti-corruption rules in sports determine how these integrity works. So no, those knowledge, sport specific knowledge, really helps when you're looking into sports law. Anti-doping is also a very, very key issue. I've had the pleasure of defending Subrata Paul, Yusuf Pathan, Narsingh Yadav, amongst many others, in anti-doping proceeding. It's a very, very specific. It's actually also a mixture of chemistry, legal, science, completely different. You will keep learning as you go. At some point, when you asked me about 8-10 years back, what is tributylene or what is steroid, I would say I don't really know. But now I can tell you what it breaks down into, what are the metabolites it breaks down into, and then how you have to defend legally. So that's something again you have to learn while you're doing profession. Don't only restrict yourself to legal. You have to go beyond it. You have to read about even science on it. You have to read even chemistry of it, because that's knowledgeable. That's knowledge that you will require when you are appearing before a panel. So a panel can ask you suddenly something, but how do you know this is that has got washed out about 4 weeks back? And then you will say, okay, sir, because this metabolite is formed in the test report, and this metabolite gets washed out in 2 weeks. This is a scientific study, and this is what it says. So it really helps when you understand not only the law but also other aspects of science and chemistry as well on it. There are various sports tribunal as well. As I said, there are disciplinary tribunal which are set up within sport federation both in India and internationally. Then there are licensing rules and regulations. So you will keep hearing about clubs losing their licenses, clubs getting debarred. So they are all governed by licensing rules and regulation. You have your selection and election disputes, which are every day in the high court, in rich jurisdictions, in civil courts. So those are very, very big gamuts that keep opening up in sports legal in India. Then you have your issues around the sports code. We have the Ministry of Youth Affairs sports code, which basically lays down the governance norm for sports. So you have writ jurisdiction and civil disputes and federation disputes happening around that. So again, that's a lot of things thrown up for lawyers within that as well. International sports governance is something also that Indians are not making a mark. Justin Mudgal led this particular view. He's the chairman of FIFA Governance and Review Committee. So, besides being an Indian, he's one of the only Asians there, and probably the first Asian to be on such a high governance. Otherwise, Asians were never taken onto the legal and the governance committees. I've been fortunate enough to be coming onto the World Athletics. I sit on the election oversight panel of World Athletics. So again, I think I'm the only Asian there as well. So that's another field that is opening up for international sports governance. And then I realized there are various people who are there working in international fora who are Indians. So that's another field. Don't ever restrict yourself to domestic. International field also opens up to you in various with various fields of specialization. Also with commercialization of sports, there are number of leagues that are coming in. So that also throws up opportunities for league structuring, league dispute, team agreements, player agreements, you name it, broadcasting agreements, rights agreements, venue hire agreements, administrative concessionaire agreements. So those are all based in contracts, but your specialized knowledge in sports will definitely help you. And that is what you have to mingle or get together when you're talking about sports law. Uh, and as in what we are seeing, and what the sports law is also developing, your OTT broadcasting is developing, your new media broadcasting is developing, your COVID has thrown in fan engagement exercises, and that's something new that we are also learning. Sorry, on how fan engagement can take place. What are the new technologies in that? You know, a lot of people are talking about having sound echo-based broadcasting or fan engagement. People are talking about technology based on Wi-Fi based broadcasting in stadiums. So you name it, and those are things that we are also learning and also adapting. Old traditional advertising used to happen. You must have seen in stadia advertising, where one particular brand used to be shown. Now broadcasters and sponsors are also using technology. Now there are electronic boards. So when the technology electronic boards came in, not only were you buying the particular area, you were also buying a time on that particular board as well. That I wanted my time in the first to 15 minutes for 20 seconds. Somebody was buying from 15 to 30 minutes. Those are the things that came up. Again, we had to develop our contracts on it. Now there's a new technology that has come in. And I'm just trying to tell you how technology keeps developing and how your legal also have to keep developing. Now, a new technology is also come in where you can have a board only showing in one particular country, where in another country that board will not show. So say for China, they will show China cement, but in India, it may show India cement. So that's again a technology. So a company from India can say, okay, fine, because I'm India focused, I will only buy rights for sponsorship for India facing. But the China company I will buy only rights for China facing. So again, your sponsorship contracts and your broadcasting contracts have also changed with that particular technology coming in. As technology develops, you also have to keep developing. In gaming law, again, that's a very, very big developing field. But upfront, when I got into it as well, there was nothing known as daily fantasy sports. Daily fantasy sports was really considered sports betting and were considered illegal. But there are various high court judgments which have come and said that daily fantasy sports is legal. And I'm sure you've heard of Dream 11, Ballebazi, Nostradamus, amongst many others advertising in various events as well on TV during many major events. So that's again something an area which is developed. Rummy has developed, poker has developed as the fields of gaming, and people are betting on it or actually staking money on it. And there are various high court judgments and legislation supporting it. There are now state legislatures which are actually giving licenses for it. So that's again an opportunity now that is thrown up, that work with legislators on licenses, and you work with gaming companies on licenses compliances, procuring licenses with them, and then responsible gaming, amongst many other things. So as and when you keep developing, even for gaming law, as and when you keep seeing, it goes beyond, like in gaming is going beyond the casinos, the traditional casinos and the traditional lotteries, to online. And I'm sure it will go beyond as well, to online mingling with retail, and to whatnot, maybe Google glasses, and maybe virtual gaming, and I don't know what. So again, as and when technology develops, and as when the sector develops, you have to keep developing with it, and the law has to keep with it. And alternate careers in law will keep coming in. For me, as I said, sports and gaming laws came in, and that's how I developed it, and I just try to give you a flavor of it, and you can pursue whatever you would want to. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir, for your enriching thoughts. I especially agree with the first point when you said that you shouldn't have a myopic viewpoint of law, because so many practices that we see now in 2020, like these practices were virtually non-existent 20 to 30 years from now. So, like, as we all areas of law which are not also taught in law schools, but still there are like emerging practice in that area. So I believe like all the sports law enthusiasts and people who are trying to pursue a career in sports law will take inspiration from your personal stories. Now I would request the second speaker to kindly begin with the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ariman. Am I clearly audible? Right. Really enjoyed the talk by Mr. Vidush. I think it really struck a chord. Like few of the insights, especially with respect to legal studies, giving you various tools which you can apply across various professions, business, technology, etc. And especially the role of mentor. I think you'll see some of these points getting emphasized during my presentation as well. Really honored to be here. Thank you, GNLU. Thank you, Think India. Ganesh ji and Rahul ji are there. We go way back, and definitely they're a great platform to promote knowledge. But more than that, I think if you're a law student and you reach out to them for help and you want them to, partner with you or collaborate, they really go all out and they support you wholeheartedly. I think that's a huge. So for any young law student, if you have your own initiative, Think India is the place to go. Arvind, would it be okay if I share my screen once so that I can give them access to the presentation?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you see my screen? Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Are you seeing someone, right? Okay. So what I'll do is I'll divide my presentation into three parts. So first is I'll give you a quick glimpse of our journey of what all has happened in the field of ADR and what all have we achieved, what are our next plans. And from that journey, two insights can be taken, two alternative careers. First being exploring a career in ADR itself, with special focus on mediation and online dispute resolution, ODR. And the second would be an alternative career in legal entrepreneurship. So these will be the two specific career points I'll be focusing on. Okay, so quickly, I'll give a quick recap. So way back in 2015, I think we started engaging with this idea of mediation, ADR, etc. Because if there's one person who shows the plight of the Indian justice system, it's this guy, right? It's I don't know whether you've seen. It's a movie in 1995 called Damin, and where Sunny Deol screams Tariq pe Tariq. A movie in 1995, but unfortunately a reality in 2020 still. Because if you look at the statistics of Indian justice system, there was an NGO called Daksh based out of Bangalore, where our company is also based. They did a survey of 10 lakh litigants, and they found out that we have around 3.2 crore cases. Back then, it has come down to 2.8 now. Average time a case takes is 36 to 48 months, which is 3 to 4 years. According to the Delhi High Court, it will take us around 464 years to clear this backlog of cases. Each hearing takes around 520 rupees, and we are spending 0.4% of the Indian GDP only on litigation. Our ease of doing business rank, primarily because of enforcing contracts, is 163 out of 190. It is much lower than other underdeveloped South Asian nations. And I think when these statistics came out in the Daksh Access Justice Report, it sort of really triggered emotions. That you're wondering, my father also doesn't like lawyers at all, and he has a very negative perception on lawyers. And I used to feel very embarrassed of that. And I think then coincidentally, like you guys are organizing webinars, there was a seminar in our college where it was an access to justice webinar, where Justice Pinaki Chandra Ghosh, he's a retired Supreme Court judge. He's also the first Lokpal of India. He came and he said how Indian justice system is working really hard to promote access to justice. And I didn't buy that at all. So when he completed his speech, I stood up and my question to him was that if there is such backlog of cases, why do judges in India have summer vacations? Why do judges in India have Durga Puja break, winter vacations, etc.? And I thought it was a very relevant question. My batchmates were there. So it was a very courageous question. But he looked at me and he smiled at my ignorance of the full picture of the Indian justice system. And he told me a life of a judge in India. They do not have a life. The judges in India are tremendously understaffed. We need one judge for a population of lakh. We have one judge for a population of 50 lakhs. So the judge to population ratio is 1/3 of the required limit. They have to work on weekends, they have to work on vacations. He himself, for example, when he was in the Calcutta High Court, he used to deal with 400 to 500 matters in a period of 4 to 5 hours. That's roughly one matter in 3 to 4 minutes. And he said that, and when he was scolding me or when he was telling me this, the actual pitch, I got a little taken aback. And my question to him was, what can be done to help the courts? And he said, Pranjal, don't come to courts. Out of court settlement karo and technology use karo. So I think that really gave us, that was a foundation point for us when we started exploring this out of court settlement. And one second, I'm not able to control the screen. Yeah. And I think that led the birth of an initiative called ODR Waste Solutions Private Limited. Now it's rebranded as Summer. And the idea was we will leverage on the power of ADR and combine it with technology and promote access justice in India. So we came up with an ODR platform. It's an online dispute resolution platform where all kinds of ADR services, being arbitration, mediation, negotiation, conciliation, can be provided online. And so as you can see, it was a platform for mediation, conciliation, arbitration, technology-led dispute resolution. And we thought it was an extremely suitable solution considering there is a demand. There's such a huge backlog of cases, and we have these online mechanisms where you don't even have to go outside, step outside your house. Just using a platform, you can settle your disputes with the other person in a legal manner, fully online, and very efficiently. And we took, we got a lot of recognition. We got recognized by Google as a socially most innovative platform 2015. World Mediation Organization Bangkok recognized as the most successful online mediation model in Asia to get high-stake matters. This is my co-founder, CTO. One of the biggest challenges I'll tell you about a startup is to find technology. Will be that will build that technology, because you being a lawyer, you can't code. So how will you do that? And I think he, by sacrificing 4 to 5 years, really contributed in making ODR is what it is today. We took 2 approaches to ODR. One was like a full-fledged model, which is end-to-end. Like you file a case online, you upload documents, you chat online, video conferencing online, and the final settlement award or the arbitral award gets passed online. The other was we used to connect people to mediators. Like if people had disputes, we used to connect them to a suitable mediator, and that was an aggregator model. The problem was when we launched these platforms in 2015, for the first 2 years, we did not get a single case. And that sort of really bothered us because we were not able to understand where are we going wrong. And I think what we realized was this was a big challenge for us to tackle, because like the same survey done by Daksh also found out that 54% of the people in India are not aware of ADR services. They don't know about mediation. They think it's meditation or they think it's Lok Adalat. So there are a lot of apprehensions and confusions around ADR service about the existence of ADR services itself. So we realized that our first responsibility would be to sensitize the general public about ADR services, about mediation services. And we launched the Indian Mediation Week campaign. The Indian Mediation Week campaign was based on promoting and sensitizing the general public about mediation using different ways. We used to go to the streets, distribute mediation pamphlets. We used music, used to perform in the public. People used to gather. We used to distribute mediation pamphlets. Flash mobs were done in different parts of the city. This was an interesting incident. We went to the Calcutta High Court and during lunchtime, we got a permission for 5 minutes and we did like a Nukkad Natak saying that Nukkad Natak on promoting mediation. But as it was getting over, we were getting surrounded by more and more lawyers and we got a little scared. And then they made us stop the play and they were like, how dare you come to court and tell people to not to go to court? How dare you attacking my bread and butter in front of my potential clients? And that is an unfortunate, like there is a apprehension about for lawyers against ADR. They look at it as alarming drop in revenue, which is absolutely not correct. But yeah, but we got 8 to 10 cases that day. So this campaign was based on the motto of Suljhao Magar Pyar Se, because we wanted a very simple way of conveying the message of ADR to the general public of India. And we got various kind of matters from these campaign. Consumer matters, matrimonial issues, divorce issues, property disputes. We even got a 400 crore worth mining dispute where a mining company wanted to acquire a piece of land which had a lot of rich minerals. but there were some 500 villager families who were staying there. So in India, generally mining companies use gundas and goons to acquire land, and then stay orders can be passed, etc. So it becomes a huge hassle. But fortunately, we were able to speak with the CSR head of the company. So the CSR head was one of our friends' father, so it was easy to reach out to him. And then they engaged with us, and they used three of our mediators. So three of our mediators stayed in the village for 9 months, and through a process called rehabilitation and resettlement, they were able to negotiate a settlement between that mining company and 500 families. And that was the power of dialogue building. That was the power of collaboration and reaching mutually agreeable settlements. And that really gave us also validation in this idea. So this is what we did respect to the Indian Mediation Week campaign. And now we work with different enterprises. If you can see, these are few of our clients: ICICI, Vedanta, OLX, Udan. Right now, we are focusing on small to medium-sized disputes. It's a business-facing model. So these, for example, ICICI Bank has loan disputes up to 20 lakhs. So instead of using recovery agents or collection mechanisms, they are using our platform for online mediation, and they're reaching settlements with their customers. And the funny thing is that a lot of people used to say, why will a customer, a loan defaulter, prefer a faster dispute resolution mechanism? He'll have to pay faster then. But when we engage with these loan customers, 95% of them are not intentional defaulters. They are not willful defaulters. They want to repay. They do not even like the tag of a defaulter. They care about their CIBIL score, but there is some emergency, like a financial emergency, medical emergency, family issue, because of which they are not able to repay. So there, our mediators help them to come up with a repayment plan which is suitable for their cash flow, as well as which is suitable for the bank's policies as well. And then they reach an agreement. So similarly with OLX, there are e-commerce disputes between sellers and buyers on the platform, consumer disputes. Now, products sold on OLX are 2,000 rupees, 3,000 rupees. For those, it doesn't make sense for you to even take an auto to the consumer forum. So for these kind of businesses, it makes more sense to have a collaborative, safe online dispute resolution mechanism. And right now, and the funny thing was that for the first 8-9 months of existence, we graduated from college last year. For the first 8-9 months, we only had one client. But when the pandemic struck, all these companies' legal teams who were very comfortable with either litigation or lok adalats, they started shifting to ODR, because right now ODR why is it an important alternative career for you? Because it's not just online dispute resolution, it has become only dispute resolution mechanism which is available for these small to medium-sized disputes. So this is how these are different kind of enterprises we are serving. These are the different kind of cases we handle. The average time it takes on a platform to resolve disputes is 3 hours and 15 minutes over a period of 22 days. The maximum till now has been 6 hours over a period of 120 days, which was an online arbitration. These are the organizations we have collaborated with: Trilegal, Agami. Agami I will speak more about, because it plays an extremely crucial role for people who are looking at legal entrepreneurship. We have been recognized by the Department of Justice to provide online arbitration, online mediation services. CAMP, Media Center, with respect to data privacy, Bayside Technologies are partners here. I spoke about the campaign. Right now, there are 650 plus mediators, arbitrators, 850 plus case managers. Now, again, I will emphasize on case managers there because that's something relevant for law students and they can adopt it right now. And they're present in 85 cities across India, fluent in 15 plus languages, handling different kinds of cases. So this brings me back. So this has been a journey right now from the access to justice problem pain point, which triggered the journey, to building an ODR platform, to sensitizing the general public about mediation, ADR, and when they start asking, where can we get services? Building also a backend platform where they can get connected to mediators or they can get full end-to-end ODR services. So this has been our key journey for the last 5 years. Two important careers which can come out from this journey is, first is, I spoke about case managers here, I'll stick to that first. So basically, a lot of us, like even in our 3rd year, 4th year of law school, we did these expensive mediation trainings. They are 40-hour mediation trainings prescribed by the Supreme Court MCPC guidelines. And we did it, and they can range between 30,000 to 40,000 rupees. But after doing the training, I didn't get a single case. It just became a tag on my resume, a brownie point that I'm a certified mediator from Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Government of India. But how will a young mediator like me get cases? I really wanted to practice my mediation skills. And that's where we saw the gap, and we have come up with this concept of manager slash assistant neutral. So basically what happens is that it's not, and the prerequisite is not, you don't have to do a training for this. We give you a quick case management workshop. It's an online case management workshop. What a case, what are the benefits of being a case manager? You are basically all the parties, because everyone is online in different cities. You're coordinating with all of them to make sure there is rapport, there is comfort with technology, and the fact that they're able to reach a settlement. So you as a case manager build trust and ensure neutrality. You support to all the parties. You as a case manager will get first-hand dispute resolution experience. So you will see firsthand how a personal unsecured loan matter gets resolved, or how a consumer dispute between seller and buyer gets resolved. Also, each case will offer a different perspective, because as a case manager, you are basically shadowing a mediator and arbitrator. So you will see what kind of different techniques they use to make parties reach a settlement. And basically, case managers, if you're interested in exploring a career in ADR, a case manager is your first step in the ADR journey. As a case manager, you have to ensure neutrality, autonomy of the parties. You have to make sure the process is fully confidential. You are also like a partner to the mediator arbitrator, because a lot of these times customers they think of mediators, arbitrators as judges, but they will be more comfortable with the case manager. So they might tell you things which you can convey to the mediator arbitrator, and he can make sure it's a part of the conversation. You have to be prompt with your scheduling. Basically, you also have to be tech savvy, and that's not difficult. It's a very simple platform which you can use to coordinate with the parties. You need to be fully aware of the case details. Whenever a case document gets uploaded, you have to go through it. One very important thing is that as a case manager, you don't give legal advice. You don't enter the merits of the case, but you make sure the momentum keeps going. So every time, like you just make sure there's certainty. There's something called case updates. You update it every day so that parties are fully aware. How does a case manager basically work? You go on the platform, Sama.live. There's a case manager registration link. You register, you fill your details there, what has been your ADR experience, etc. After you have filled that, we will give a call will happen with Sama team where you'll be given a case management workshop. All these points which I quickly skim through, you will be taken through in detail, where you will understand how ADR case management actually works. For people who have less than 5 years of legal experience, they have to do a minimum of 10 cases as a case manager. Then after doing your 10 cases, on the basis of your settlement rate, the number of cases which got settled, which you managed, and the basis of the feedback from the parties and the mediator arbitrator, you get promoted to being a full-time mediator on the platform. So that is how, and even for our advocates, when they come to our platform to register as a mediator arbitrator, if they do not have offline mediation experience, they start as a case manager. So once they get that 10 cases experience, then they move on to become a mediator on the platform. This is the registration link. I'll also share it on the chat. You can have a look there. So this is respect to how you can explore your career in the ADR sector, alternative dispute resolution, ODR, etc. I will quickly come to the last point about legal entrepreneurship. And I think there is one very popular approach. You can check it out on Google. It's called the societal platform approach. Access to justice, which is a problem close to our hearts, is an extremely large scale societal challenge. And it requires a new way of thinking. Basically, it cannot be solved by one player alone. It needs co-creation. So there are 3 key points where if you want to come up with your own initiative, which can tackle an access to justice challenge, you can rely on a societal platform approach, which depends on you use data to come up with your solutions. Lot of ideas which you come up with have already been implemented, failed, or succeeded in some different parts of the continent. Maybe you can learn from them, use that as data points. Resolving for scale, you should also you should figure out a way that how the solution, the mediators or the technology are coming up with can be used for a bigger set of the population. and inspiring co-creation. You have to create an environment where people can interact and collaborate in coming up with relevant solutions. So for your legal tech initiatives, you have to make sure that you use a societal platform approach so that you can tackle such a big societal challenge. The second part of it is, I think it was came up in Vidush sir's part as well, but I would like to re-emphasize here two key qualities which can really help an entrepreneur. One thing which really helped me was that when we started this, we were in the second year of law school. So we had a safety bubble of a law school for 4 years. We didn't have a burden to start making revenue immediately, right? So that gave us a lot of freeway to, and that's coming from a position of privilege because a lot of people have student loans which they have to repay or they have the burden to earn immediately. I didn't have that, fortunately. So talking about that, clearing that part, two things which really help is learn the art of asking. There is no shame in asking because if you don't ask, the answer is always going to be no. So make sure you always ask whatever doubts, whatever anything which you anything, because one like that question which I asked to the judge really helped me in shaping my journey, because it was also might not be the smartest question, but it really triggered a chain of thoughts. And second is seek mentorship. Like this is a point which cannot be emphasized enough. I think when we were in our second year of law school, our mentor was Justice Pratik Prakash Banerjee, who's the youngest judge in the Calcutta High Court. And I think he really held us. Like we heard about this British concept of ODR and we wanted to implement this in India, but he really helped us like understand the nuance and how to apply it in an Indian context. He was really a soundboard for us. And again, like lot of people ask like how to find mentors. And I think it's related to learn the art of asking. You have to drop them emails. Because you have to request them for 5-minute calls, 10-minute calls. Because what we have seen is people want to help. It's not like they don't want to help. They just don't know how to help you. And you have to make that easier for them. And you can only do that by reaching out to them on your own, setting up calls, and reach out to multiple people. But this having a good mentor can really, really, really expedite your journey in the legal entrepreneurship field, especially. These are the few websites you can check. One is the societalplatform.org, which gives you which teaches you how to implement societal approach when you're building large scale initiatives. Second is now for anyone who has a legal tech idea, you might need help in technology, might need help in financial resources, you might need office space, mentorship, etc. Agami is a legal tech incubator, accelerator. It's based out of Bangalore. They specifically help legal tech initiatives from an idea stage to a business stage. Sama.live is a platform where you can register as a case manager. IndianMediationWeek.com, if you want to help us promote mediation in India, promote ADR in India, you can also become an ambassador and lead the mediation awareness campaign in your city. Number, reach out to me. Thank you so much. And I just want to say these two careers, they have a lot of legal entrepreneurship as a career in ADR. Give it a thought and feel free to reach out any issues adults. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. And the point about increase in ODR is not disputable at all, because recently I was also doing some research about the real estate sector in Delhi, and I found out like most of these companies are now moving towards ODR because the cost of litigation just like eats away all their profit. So I think ODR is a win-win situation for everyone, especially in such scenarios. And with your thoughts about having the guts to ask someone, like let's move to the Q&A session now. And I would request everyone to put their questions and their name and institution in the chat. And I would request the speakers to take the questions one by one.
Yeah, Arman, there are a few questions in the chat box. You can ask the speakers.
Kindly mention your names and the name of your institution if you're asking a question. So we have a question by Mr.